All right. Hi, my name is Grayson McKinney, and for my task, I chose juggling. I chose juggling because originally I tried to do a handstand, and all the resources I read online said that it would take months or years to learn a handstand, and I was like, I have 4 weeks, so we're going to do juggling instead. And all the resources I saw online said that juggling you could learn in like 15 minutes. That was wrong. So yeah, juggling in and of itself is considered a continuous task. You are just juggling. You can stop when you want, but there's no defined endpoint. You're just going. But the way that I taught myself how to juggle, or at least tried to teach myself how to juggle, it was kind of broken up into different parts. So there's juggling one ball in one hand or 2 balls in 2 hands. And I think that you could define that as a discrete task. It's pretty easy. Throw a ball, catch it in the other hand. It's pretty easy. It's got a very specific beginning and end point, and it's a very specific path from A to B. And then the way that I taught myself, the way that the website that I followed taught me how, broke it up into things called cascades, which is a set of 3. So you've got 3 balls, throw, catch. And I would consider that a serial task as a cascade of a juggle, because it's made up of the discrete tasks of throwing and catching individual balls, but it makes up one kind of in-between task. Overall, juggling is a pretty closed skill. You decide when you want to start, you decide when you want to stop. There's very little getting in the way of you juggling, unless you're in the circus. And you're relying mostly on feed forward instead of feedback. You do have a small amount of feedback, but it's pretty much limited to like, whoops, I accidentally threw a ball all the way out here, and now I have to go reach to catch it, and 99% of the time I've literally dropped the ball. And so you're kind of just relying a lot more on feed forward. I know that for me, whenever I was practicing, I knew that I have a tendency to throw further away from my body, so I had to use my feed forward and start throwing closer to my body. So that's an example of how I used feed forward in the skill. When I was practicing, it was pretty much always in a closed environment. I did have my family members and my roommates and whoever else I was practicing around, but they were hardly ever trying to attack me or distract me or what have you. My goal for the juggling task was to do 3 full cascades, which is 3 sets of 3 catches and 3 throws. It would be 9 throws and 9 catches in total. I did not do that. A lot of the teaching that I did for myself, I actually followed an article online called "How Long Does It Take to Learn How to Juggle?" I found it on a website called jugglingsecrets.com. So I guess there's a community for that, for juggling secrets. One thing I noticed when I was practicing was I think a lot of people, if they went to learn how to juggle, would have had kind of a good carryover from childhood practice of throwing and catching balls and having good hand-eye coordination. I think I had the opposite here, because whenever I was growing up, I played soccer for 12 years. I was a rock climber. I did archery, and so I didn't have a lot of practice with hand-eye coordination as a kid, and as a result, it turns out I'm really bad at throwing and catching balls. And I'm also really bad juggling. And I messed up a lot. Yeah. So overall, I would say that my method specifically, the way that I taught myself and the way that I learned, was probably more in line with Fitz's stages of learning, with a caveat. So I'll say like Fitz's stages of learning, you've got the cognitive, the fixation, the autonomy, the autonomous, And it's the way that I imagine Fitz's stages is kind of like a linear progression. It's just like you've got a general understanding of what the task is, and so you're getting the very basics down. And it's okay if you mess up. You're just doing what Schmidt describes in the textbook as discovery learning. It's just learning things naturally along the way. You're not making a specific attempt to do things perfectly. You're just allowing yourself to make mistakes and allowing your subconscious learning to just correct those. And then you've got your fixation stage where you're now kind of at a cognitive level of correction while also just subconsciously correcting things, and you're getting out the kinks. And then eventually you reach autonomy, where you've mastered the skill, so to speak, and you can do it without much cognitive effort. Whereas in Bernstein stages, you've got reducing the degrees of freedom, getting the absolute perfect form and throw and catching it perfectly every single time, doing the absolute perfect juggling form, I guess. And then once you've got the form just perfectly and not allowing yourself to make any mistakes, you can now release some of your degrees of freedom, which is the second stage. And it's kind of allowing yourself to have a little more leeway with where you throw and where you catch, and allowing yourself to make mistakes that way and to learn that way. And then eventually you reach Bernstein's third stage of learning, which is taking advantage of natural dynamics and just like, oh, I've got the momentum from this hand where I threw up, I'm gonna allow that to follow in with how I'm gonna catch this ball, and vice versa in this hand. And it's just your subconscious taking advantage of just physics and using it to your advantage, whether you realize it or not. And I think that I followed Fitz's stages of learning a lot more in line. I think that I kind of just allowed myself to make mistakes, and I allowed myself to just naturally get better over time through practice and muscle memory. And I will say, as a caveat, I think at a certain point in the Fitz stages of learning, you actually add on Bernstein's third stage of learning as a kind of fourth stage of learning for Fitz. And I think that once you reach autonomy with Fitz, you can also start to take advantage of physics, kind of like how Bernstein talks about in his third stage. And I am not great at juggling. I probably didn't get quite to that point, but I could see myself getting to that point in the practice. I could see myself getting there slowly. Overall, whenever I first started out, I could hardly throw and catch the 2 balls. And now I'm pretty consistently being able to catch 4, whether I make mistakes during the task or not.
Hey.
And so while I'm not perfect at juggling, I would say that I learned at least a little bit. So thank you for watching.